just want to start by asking our witnesses just a yes or no, and I'll go down the line, start with Mr. Hawkins. Do you agree with the 97% of the scientists who say with 95% certainty that climate change is happening as the result of activity by humans? Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Trautz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
I'm not a scientist to say yes or no on that.
Okay. So I want to start, Mr. Hilton, you stated you had concerns that DOE is out of money and does not have enough money to implement this. And were you aware that back in December they announced an $8 billion loan guarantee for these programs?
Absolutely, but a loan guarantee doesn't give you money. It guarantees failure and recoup of the loan. The problem is to do a project and get it financed. And you might notice there's been no carbon capture projects applying for the $8 billion.
Would the hundreds of millions of dollars, though, that we have for R&D that's proposed in the budget, would that be sufficient?
Well, there's only something on the order of about less than $100 million in the CCS program. What I'm talking about is the kind of programs that lead to the demonstrations, like the proposed summit project, the projects that have been delayed, where they put our, if you will, our project at American Electric Power, where we had $450 million.
Right.
But the Public Utility Commission refused because there was no regulatory requirement to allow the utilities to recover any costs on the project. So those are the kind of funds we need, and those don't exist in the DOE budget.
Mr. Hawkins, does NRDC, one of the country's most respected environmental organizations, believe that there is a role for coal in our nation's energy future? And if so, why? If not, why?
We do believe that there is a role for coal. How long that role will last is a matter of conjecture. It will, in our view, depend on a combination of factors, including whether coal can be brought into the 21st century and perform as an energy resource that is consistent with our other needs to protect our society's dependence on a stable climate. Right now, it's not consistent, and whether it becomes consistent is precisely the topic of this hearing, and we thank you for holding it.
And do you think that EPA standards are putting coal plants out of business, or clean natural gas boom, putting coal plants out of business?
The biggest challenge to coal investments today is the marketplace. That we have slack power demand, in part due to the continuing effects of the recession, in part due to good things like energy efficiency and improved renewables production. And we have abundant, low-cost natural gas. And that makes it very difficult for investors to look at a new coal project and say, this is where we should put our money. It's just not attractive.
And Mr. Hawkins, do you believe that it would be appropriate for the EPA to establish standards requiring implementation of CCS at existing plants? And I draw the distinction between those plants existing now and the proposed regulations for the future.
We think that CCS should be permitted as a compliance technique for any regulation of existing power plants, but we have not seen an analysis that would suggest that it could be required across the board and meet economic tests.
And Mr. Hawkins, how can EPA determine that a technology is adequately demonstrated if it is not yet commercially available? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, the difference between commercial availability and adequate demonstration is very specific to the sector that's being looked at. So commercial availability asks the question, is there a vendor that that is willing to provide a commercial product to a particular type of industrial source? And if there is no market for it, the answer is often no. Actually, in this case, there are vendors who provide commercial carbon capture systems for power plants. So in this case, there is commercial availability. There just isn't commercial use because there's no reason for the power plant operators to use it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. And with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time.